Did you know what language you speak can affect the way you see color? And did you know that blue is a relatively new color? Or at least it's relatively new to the English language. So you probably know color is the way our brains perceive different wavelengths of light, either reflected or emitted by different objects. But when your science teacher taught you about color, they probably focused a lot on the wavelength and less about another important part of that, which is the perception. Our perceptions are not just responses to what's in the physical world in front of us, they're also responses to how we've been trained and socialized. So language is really interesting when it comes to perception. A lot of times we take language for granted. We think that language is just a way of communicating our internal thought. But it's a lot more complicated than that because our thoughts and language kind of happen concurrently. If we don't have a word for something, it's a lot more difficult for us to perceive or to think that thought at all. And this becomes really interesting when it comes to how we perceive color. Color exists on a spectrum, so there's no clear delineation between where one color stops and another begins. Where we draw those lines is not scientific, so therefore in different cultures, those lines have been drawn in different places. For example, in Russian, there's a different word for light blue and dark blue, making light blue a separate color from dark blue. And historically and across different languages, it has not been uncommon for blue and green to not be delineated. Blue has been many times and continues to be by some people considered a shade of green. This was the case of the ancient Greek. It was the case in Old Chinese and in Japanese, although now they do make a distinction. And when those different words are part of your culture, it doesn't just change the way you speak about those colors, it changes the way your brain perceives those colors. Since you're watching this video in English, I assume that when you look at this chart, you can easily identify the blue square. But for the Himba people in Namibia, their language does not include a separate word for the color blue. So when they were shown this chart, they had a really hard time distinguishing which of these squares was different. But they had a very easy time distinguishing which of these squares was a slightly different shade of green. Something that when people in England were shown this chart, they could not do. The first mention of blue wasn't found in any language until about 4,500 years ago. And early references to blue in Old English use it to mean almost black or purple, just like dark hues in general. But it's actually a color that doesn't occur that much in nature as opposed to the other colors. So it tends to be the one that shows up the latest in language.